ever scroll through social media and feel like everyone else has it all figured out? Like they're 10 steps ahead, living their best life, while you're still trying to figure out what step one even looks like? Yeah, me too. Welcome to Walking It Out. I am your host, Latrice Clark Jordan, and I am so honored that you're here for this very first episode. And check this, my very first podcast. That'll be like, at some point I'll have like sound effects going. Anyway, let me start by saying this isn't going to be a perfectly polished podcast where I have all the answers, because honestly, I don't. What I do have is a story of transition, of fear, of stepping into the unknown, and of learning what it really means to walk in obedience with God. Even when everything in me wanted to stay comfortable. So let me take you back. About 10 years ago, I was a single mother of two young daughters. We were living in New Jersey, and I had family in Long Island, New York, so I was kind of like back and forth. I was just surrounded by family. That's where I grew up. I'm a northerner. And friends and everything that was familiar to me, that was my safe space. And I was facing one of the hardest decisions of my life. I had to leave a marriage, leave everything I knew, and step into a future I couldn't see. I remember my fear at that time. The questions that kept me up at night. Like, what if I'm making the wrong choice? What if I can't do this on my own? What if I'm messing up my daughter's lives? What about the judgment? What will people think? Those are questions that were plaguing me. But let me sit in that fear for a minute, because that was a real feeling for me. Because I think we don't talk about it enough. We talk about the outcome. We talk about the victory. We talk about how God came through. And He does, and He will, as always. But we don't always talk about the terror of the in-between, because we want to skip over that part, as if to say that loving God is taboo because you got a little bit of fear. I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. I mean, I would wake up at night staring at the ceiling, running through every worst case scenario. What if I couldn't find a job? What if I couldn't afford rent? What if my daughters resented me for uprooting their lives? What if I was running away from something I should have stayed and fought for? Like, all of that. I was thinking about all of that. And then on top of that, there was shame. The shame of feeling like I was failing as a wife, failing as a mother, failing at keeping my family together. I grew up in the church. I knew what people thought about divorce. I knew the whispers. I knew the judgment. I knew all of that. That's what something my now pastor calls second way. We'll get into that along the way. But here's what I also knew. Deep down, beneath all that fear and shame, I knew I couldn't stay. I knew that staying would have meant losing myself completely. I knew that God was calling me for something different, something I couldn't even see yet. Something that required me to trust him more than I have ever trusted him before. And when I say that, I mean, I had to make a decision. So I made one. I was moving to Sandy Springs, Georgia, a place I've never been before, a place where I knew no one, a place that felt like the edge of the earth. Like I was going from one extreme of knowing everything about everything to another extreme of knowing nothing. So let me tell you about the logistics of that fear, though. Because fear isn't just emotional. At least it wasn't just emotional for me. It was practical. Like it's packing up my entire life, putting my entire life into boxes, and wondering if I'm making the biggest mistake of my life with every item wrapped in some type of bubble wrap or newspaper and putting it on a moving truck to take my things from one state to another. It's explaining to my daughters, who already was dealing with so much, that they're leaving everything they knew, all that they knew. It's like watching their little faces try to be brave when I know probably deep inside they were scared too. It's filling out job applications from hundreds of miles away and praying someone will take a chance on me. It's Googling neighborhoods and school districts and trying to figure out where I'm going to live when I don't even know if I can afford to live there. It's calling apartment complexes and hearing the words first month, last month, security deposit, and feeling my stomach drop because I'm not sure how I'm going to make it work. I was thinking all of that. I'm hundreds of miles away doing all of this, what we consider remotely. But there was something deeper than that fear. There was this quiet, persistent voice. And I found that to be the voice of God saying, trust me, walk with me, I've got you. And I want to be clear about something. That voice didn't make the fear go away. It didn't even make the logistics easier. It didn't make people suddenly understand or support my decisions. What it did was give me the courage to take the next step. Just the next one. Not the whole staircase, just the next step. So I packed up my life, my 2 little girls, and I moved to Sandy Springs, Georgia, a place I didn't even know, where I had no family, no friends, and no safety net. And let me tell you, those first few months were hard. Like, I mean, really hard. There were nights I cried myself to sleep, wondering if I made a huge mistake, wondering if I was strong enough, wondering if God had forgotten about me. Because, I mean, it was lonely. I remember the first night in our new apartment. It was mostly empty, of course. We didn't have much furniture. And the girls were asleep in their new room. And I was sitting on the floor in the living room, surrounded by boxes, and I just broke down, sobbing. The kind of crying where you can't catch your breath, where your whole body is shaking. Like, you know, as we like to say, that ugly cry. When you're not even sure what you're even crying about. Because everything is all at once. It's just not making any sense. And in that moment, I felt so alone. So completely and utterly alone. But here's the thing. God hadn't forgotten about me. So, what I had to decide to do is I had to find a rhythm. Because I got this job. It wasn't a dream job, but it was a job that paid the bills. I found a church, a place where I could bring my girls and feel like maybe, just maybe, we could build a community here. I had the school for my girls. I had the local grocery store, what they called Publix, or it was a Kroger, because I had no idea what that was. I was like, there's no shop, right? Now remember, I'm a northerner. And at the time, I think that we had Pathmark too, but I think Pathmark is going away. But anyway, I found a park and like little things to do with my girls that a place that was considered foreign could feel a little less foreign. And then 4 months into this new life in Georgia, I met my now husband, Vincent. And y'all, I was not looking for love. I was trying to survive. I was trying to figure out how to be a single mom in a new city. And I was trying to keep my head above water. But God had other plans. I remember the first time I saw him. We were in a place, nobody but us. And I wasn't even impressed. And I know that sounds terrible, but it's true. He'll tell you the same thing. He may not say he wasn't impressed, but he'll tell you he wasn't looking for love either. He was like over it. And we'll bring my husband on in the later episodes and we could talk about our story, but he can corroborate. Like he wouldn't be either. Like I wouldn't be. Because I was just focused on just getting through each day, that the idea of adding another person to my life felt super overwhelming. And I was just not interested. I was like, whatever. But there was something about him. Something steady. Something intriguing. Something that made me feel like maybe I didn't have to do this all alone. But I wasn't quite sure. So we started talking. Then we started spending some time together. And slowly, carefully, I let my guard down. In its own way, by the way. Because I've been hurt. I've been disappointed. I've learned that people leave, that promises break, that love doesn't always last. So I wasn't with the games. I wasn't with the foolery. But he stayed. He showed up. Not just for me, but for my daughters. He didn't try to replace their father, which I'm super grateful for. And he didn't try to rush anything. He just showed up consistently, patiently, and lovingly. Fast forward 10 years later, we've been together a decade, married for 5 of those 10, and now we have 2 children of our own, a son and a daughter. So I went from a family of 3 to a family of 6. So talk about transition, okay? But it hasn't been a fairy tale. Blending a family is hard. Marriage is hard. Parenting teenagers while raising little ones, that's a whole different level of hard. Adding career changes, financial stress, identity shifts, and trying to figure out who you are in the middle of all these roles. It's a lot. And through it all, the one thing that has carried me, the one thing that has brought me out of some of my darkest days is my relationship with Jesus Christ. That relationship was instilled in me at a very young age. And I'm super grateful for it. Because when everything else felt uncertain, when I felt like I was drowning, when I didn't know which way was up, He was surely my anchor. But let me be clear though. Walking with God didn't mean I didn't struggle. It didn't mean I didn't have moments of doubt, fear, anger, or confusion. It didn't mean everything magically worked out overnight. It meant I had someone to walk with, someone who saw me, someone who loved me even in my mess, someone who whispered, "Keep going, one step at a time. I'm with you." And that's what this podcast is about. Walking it out. Not having it all together. Not pretending like faith makes life easy. But choosing to keep moving forward. Even when it's hard. Even when you're scared. Even when you don't know what's next. Because here's what I've learned. Life is full of transitions. Full of in-between seasons, full of moments where you feel like you should be further along than you are, where you compare yourself to everyone else and come up short, where you wonder if you're doing it right. And at those moments, we have to choose. We can stay stuck, we can give up, we can let fear and comparison steal our joy, or we can walk it out, one step at a time. With God, in faith, even when it's messy. So that's what we're going to talk about on this podcast. How to navigate everyday life, how to process your emotions instead of stuffing them down, how to grow even when growth is uncomfortable, how to find your purpose when you feel lost, how to walk through transitions with grace, and how to stay committed to walking in obedience to God, especially when you're fearful of the unknown. Because let's be honest, we live in a world that tells us we need to have it all figured out right now, a world of instant gratification, a world where everyone's highlight reel makes you feel like you're failing, a world that says you're not there yet, you're behind. But that's not God's way. God's way is a step by step, a day by day, trusting Him even when you can't see the full picture. So if you're in a season of transition right now, I want you to know you're not alone. If you feel like there's no way out, I want you to know there is. If you feel like you should be so much further in life, I want to remind you that your journey is your journey and yours alone, not anyone else's. And I'm here to walk it out with you. So in future episodes, you can expect a mix of solo reflections where I share what I'm learning and processing, and interviews with others who are navigating their own transitions, real people, real stories, and real faith. This is going to be a safe space, a safe where we can be honest, where we can be vulnerable, where we can admit that we don't have to have it all together, and where we can encourage each other to keep going. Because we need that. We need community. We need people who get it. We need to know we're not the only ones struggling. We're not the only ones scared. We're not the only ones trying to figure it out. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to listen. And thank you for trusting me with your time and your story. If something in this episode resonated with you, you have a story you want to share, or if you just need someone to remind you that you're not alone, you can email me and I'll make sure to include that information in the show notes. This is just the beginning, y'all. the beginning of a journey we're going to take together. A journey of faith, growth, and learning to walk it out, one step at a time. So here's to the messy middle. Here's to the in-between seasons. Here's to the transitions that shape us. And here's to walking in obedience, even when we're scared. Thank you for listening to Walking It Out. Let's do this together. I'm Latrice Clark Jordan. Until next time, have grace for yourself.
And